So in chapter 45, Jacob was told by his sons that his son Joseph was still alive, and that he was governor over all the land of Egypt, and that Joseph wanted his father and his family to come down to the land of Egypt so Joseph could take care of them during this famine that was in the land. And so Jacob and all of his family left the land of Canaan and headed down to Egypt. Now at this time, Jacob and his family, they were living in the city of Hebron, or Hebron, for those living here in Howard County. And he took his journey from Hebron with all that he had, but when he gets to Beersheba, he stops. He stops in Beersheba. Now Beersheba was the southernmost town in the land of Canaan on the way down to Egypt. It's kind of like the last stop before leaving the land of Canaan. In fact, there's a phrase that you read several times in the Bible, from Dan to Beersheba. Dan was the northernmost town in the land of Israel. Beersheba is the southernmost town. And so it's kind of like saying from Maine to Florida, from sea to shining sea kind of thing. Now, why does Jacob stop in Beersheba? Put yourself in Jacob's sandals for a moment. He's just learned that his son is alive after believing for 22 years that he was dead. He's heading to Egypt to be reunited with his son. If it's me, we're not stopping anywhere. We're not stopping for the bathroom. We're going to get to Egypt. We're not stopping at all. We're just going to get there. I've got to see my son. But Jacob stops in Beersheba. And it wasn't a quick stop. It wasn't just like, we're going to get some gas and get back on the road. It was a long stop. Look at verse 1. Verse 1 says, Jacob offered a sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac. That took a while. He's got to build an altar of some kind. He's got to kill an animal. He's got to butcher the animal. He's got to roast the animal over a fire. This is a long stop in Beersheba. And oh, by the way, Beersheba is only like 25 miles from Hebron. He hasn't traveled very far at all, and he still has a long way to go to get to Egypt. I mean, this is, Smokey and the Bandit here. You got a long way to go and a short time to get there, and he needs to get back on the road, but he stops. And when my family travels, I like to just get to the destination. I don't want to stop anywhere. Let's go through the drive-thru and just get back on the road. Stopping to offer a sacrifice, I mean, that's like going into a sit-down restaurant with a waiter and a menu, and we're going to lose so much time. So why does Jacob do this? Well, a couple reasons. Beersheba was a significant place in Jacob's family. His grandfather, Abraham, who first came to the land from Ur of the Chaldees, and his father Isaac lived in Beersheba at different times. His families lived there. Some of you may remember in chapter 21 that Abraham planted a tamarisk tree. And he planted that tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called on the Lord. When we were in chapter 21, I mentioned that the tamarisk tree, its only use is for shade in the desert. And it grows very, very slowly. So when a person in the Middle East plants a tamarisk tree, it's not for themselves. They're not going to live long enough to enjoy the shade of that tree. They actually plant the tree for their grandchildren to enjoy the shade of that tree. And here is Abraham's grandson now, and Beersheba, maybe enjoying the shade of the tree that his grandpa planted many, many years before. Jacob's father Isaac, we're told, also built an altar in Beersheba and called upon the name of the Lord. And the Lord appeared to Isaac in Beersheba back in chapter 26. Perhaps Jacob sacrificed his offering on that same altar that his father built. So Beersheba was significant in the spiritual history of Jacob's family. Just as there may be significant things or significant places in your spiritual life or in the spiritual history of your family. Maybe you have, your grandfather's Bible that has his notations and his highlights in it. What a treasure that would be. Or maybe there's a church where your mom or your dad committed their lives to Christ as a child, and they were saved. And so that church is a special place and is part of your spiritual heritage. And so Beersheba was part of Jacob's spiritual heritage, but we still haven't answered the question, why did Jacob make such a long stop in Beersheba and sacrifice an offering to the Lord? I believe Jacob wants to make sure going to Egypt is God's will for him, that this is the right move. Now, obviously, it would have been better for Jacob to pray before he left for Egypt, but it's better late than never, right? Even if you get out ahead of the Lord, you can stop and say, we didn't pray. We didn't ask the Lord if this is what he wants. Let's just stop and pray and seek the Lord for guidance. I'm sure Jacob was excited to hear the news about his son Joseph, and he didn't think to pray and ask God, should he go down to Egypt or not? He probably just started packing up and let's go, and went. But when he gets to Beersheba, he gets 25 miles down the road from home, he pulls over. He stops, and he prays to seek the Lord for guidance. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Now, Jacob started this journey leaning on his own understanding. We got to go to Egypt. I got to see my son. But now he stops to acknowledge God and to allow the Lord to direct his path. And notice here, if you're a note taker, notice Jacob offers a sacrifice. That's an important detail that we're told. By offering a sacrifice to God, Jacob was revealing that he knew himself to be a sinner in need of pardon from God. Every time the patriarchs made a sacrifice, they were acknowledging they were sinners in need of forgiveness. Just as we all sin, right? We all fall short. All we like sheep go astray. We all turn to our own way at times, and we all need God's forgiveness. And God's forgiveness comes through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross. Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world.